The Crows and Lions cap off a big round of footy with a thrilling draw. Collingwood is in the top 8 for the first time in 2024. The Bombers claim a giant scalp. Are they finals bound? Plus, we put 3 disappointing teams under the microscope. This is Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com. Great to have your company. Damian Barrett and Matthew Lloyd join me as always. Welcome to you both.
Hello, Nat.
Well, what a thrilling way to finish the round. Of course, a draw at Adelaide Oval between the Crows and the Brisbane Lions. Both sides coming into this game. It was basically a mini elimination final, wasn't it, Damo? Because 12th and 13th on the ladder, and it was a frenetic finish in this one.
I love the contest, Nat. And the 12th and 13th component to it. These two clubs only with 10 premiership points. I still feel that they're going to figure in the finals. We're showing here some missed opportunities, it must be said, from both clubs. Fogarty played a really good game, but he's got the right idea, Lotto, but the execution of it wasn't there, and that was costly in the end, as was some similar mistakes made by the Lions. And even Dawson, again, it didn't miss by much, but we've seen him kick those goals in the past.
Absolutely, and then Brisbane, you thought they were the only team that could win in the last 20 seconds, and there was just, Dawson was huge in the last quarter, and they scrounged the draw. It was 3-point margin at quarter time, 2-point margin at half time, 1-point margin at three-quarter time, and then we had a draw. So I think it's a pretty even comp that's forming. They both get the 2 points. The worry for Adelaide, they have Collingwood at the G next week, but for Brisbane, they have Richmond at the Gabba. So I think Chris Fagan was pretty happy.
I think if you package up Brisbane's past fortnight with that big win against Gold Coast, in all the adversity that came with it, you then get the 2 premiership points yesterday out of the Crows. I reckon they take that. Yeah. To your point about the Crows, though, it's yet again a match that has slipped away in a couple of seasons now where it's happening pretty regularly.
I agree with that. They've lost a lot at home, the Adelaide Crows, Nat, which I think might come back to haunt them.
Well, let's talk about the Brisbane Lions, and I guess they're probably going to be ruining a fair few opportunities in that third term. Cam Rayner missed a couple, but if you look historically this season, they're actually the worst team in the competition when it comes to scoring in third terms, and that's something they've got to fix.
It's an inconsistency which probably sums up their season, and they haven't been quite right all year, and now they've got injuries to accompany their inconsistency. But they've got Richmond this week, and they'll start to get a few players back over time. So I think the Tigers come at a good time for them.
Let's talk about the Magpies, because they are inside the top 8 for the first time in 2024. They lost, of course, their first 3 games of the season, and since then 5 wins and a draw. And that first half, Lloydie, I mean, really 11 goals to 3. They just put the burners on.
Look at some of these numbers. So they smashed them at the contest, and then just owned field position all day long. Plus 25 entries, plus 13 clearance. They scored 45 points to 0 from clearance. And as I say, the fixture, they have been decimated this week. They had that many players out, but West Coast come at the perfect time. So that's the issue with our draw at the moment, with a few teams that we're going to talk about soon that skew the fixture.
And importantly for Collingwood, Lord, this now happened for the last 3 weeks. Opportunities have been given to players who've been in the system for some time without being able to establish themselves. I'm referring to McInnes and McRae there. But then you've got the newcomers in Richards and Sullivan last week, and he backed it up again on the weekend. So forced changes sometimes can provide this spark that you're not going to be given otherwise.
So the Crypto Bold play this week, and I must admit, with Mother's Day things on, I only saw about 40 seconds of the game, and it was this.
Of course it was, Nat, because you love this guy.
Harley Reed, I mean, bold, brilliant, whatever you want to call it. He just continues to amaze, and that was a beautiful highlight for the West Coast Eagles in what was probably not a great day for them.
He started well. Harley had 8 disposals early, 17 for the match, including that grab. But just want to reference Nick Dacos, the other one we talked about. He was best on ground again. Just a stellar performance. And when they get speed on the ball like that, Collingwood, they're an exciting side to watch.
Now, the other big story of the weekend is Essendon, because they are inside the top 4. They're sitting 3rd on the ladder right now, 6 wins for the season. Neither of you had the Dons in the top 8
I didn't.
In your pre-season predictions, but I did. Are they going to make finals now?
I think it'd be a shock if they missed, to be honest now, Nat. So they're 6-2 in a draw, and they have to have North Melbourne this week, and then they have Richmond the week after. So.
And then, Lordo, they've got Carlton after that and West Coast after that. So I'm giving them 3 more wins in the next 4 games, which will take them up to 9.5 wins from 12 at that point of the season when it comes.
Yeah, and I think it's just they're pretty complete in regards to, they're not relying on individuals, they're not relying on merits in great form, but you look at all these players like Archie Perkins and Caldwell and Durham, Nick Martin, just more and more names are bobbing up. We're going to talk about Guelphy soon, who had a sensational game, what Mackay's doing behind the ball. Langford is a star in the forward line. Jones is improving. So that's a fantastic tick for Brad Scott and what he's doing at the club, where so many players are improving their game.
To me, that was the story of the round, Nat, and the franking of their form in the past 5 weeks. We'll touch on how they've turned it around soon. But yeah, there's this standout storyline out of round 9.
Well, they certainly did their homework, in particular on Giant star Lachie Whitfield, because the week before James Jordan had restricted him to just 19 touches. Matt Guelphy got the job on him this weekend. He kept him to 18 disposals, his lowest for the season, and then was able to impact as well and kick 3 goals. It was a terrific performance.
Yeah, he's a heart and soul player, Matt Guelphy. He just gives maximum effort, and if you give him a job to do like this, he went after Whitfield, and that's something the Giants are going to have to look at. The opposition are going after him, and they picked apart Buckley and Sam Taylor, the way they isolated their forwards and kept them away from each other so they couldn't support each other. That Giants defence, Brad Scott coached really well.
Now, Damo, in round 4, after Essendon's 69-point loss to Port Adelaide, you wrote an article on afl.com.au. Same old Dons. We take a look here.
Yep.
Since then, they haven't lost a game. So
no, they haven't.
Taking credit for...
No, I wouldn't. I mean, at that stage, Nat, they'd won only against Hawthorn and St Kilda, and that loss, I probably read too much into it. I think I might have jumped the gun on that. Look, it was an off-field article as much as anything. I still don't feel they made all the changes. And Lordo and I have had these conversations on and off air with Kevin Sheedy still on the board. But you cannot turn around a season more starkly than they have, and absolutely full credit for them.
Yeah, they made some bold changes, Dave Barham did, and sometimes it just takes time, and it looks like this is sustainable, which is really exciting.
Are you convinced it is?
I'm convinced,
yeah. Because at the same time, you were doubting and said you couldn't trust them.
No, but you couldn't, but what I did like was the changes. I've always been behind what Dave did at the time. I didn't feel that I thought there was little things that they were trying to do, but people were protecting each other at the club. Dave Barham just put a bomb through the club, and I thought that's a good point, and that's what I may have missed in that round 4 article to that aspect of it. I need to see it though, Nat, in a final, and ultimately no change can ever be considered complete at Essendon until they actually make and win a final. And you bang on about that more than anyone.
Over 7,000 days. I don't need to remind Essendon fans of that. Let's talk about the Giants, though, because after winning their opening 5 games of the season, they've now lost 3 of their last 4. There are real concerns there, aren't there?
There are, and I've seen the concerns within the Giants camp, and we've put a package together of the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks and the issues that have been raised by first Lachie Whitfield, then Sam Taylor, and then their coach Adam Kingsley over the weekend.
Yeah, look, I think we're still not really getting our defence right at the moment. Our offence is pretty good. And yeah, we were able to control it in patches, especially through the second and third quarter.
Our contest, our method around the ball hasn't been good enough. Our defence overall hasn't been good enough. And yeah, we touched on that in the meeting today, saying our defence is not good enough and we need to defend as an 18 team. We
do need to sharpen up our game and make sure that by the end of the season we're playing our best footy. We need to address a couple of things. I think today we were beaten by a more desperate team. Last week we were beaten by a more desperate team. And so we need to tidy up some of that. We need to tidy up some of our fundamentals.
So they have everything. They have absolutely everything. They made a prelim last year, and I think we all just expected after the way they started the year that they're the team to beat. But as I said, they've had issues as a team defence and the way they're playing for a period of time.
So at the moment in the competition, there's probably 3 teams that we're most disappointed with in 2024. So we're going to just run the rule over them a little bit, Damo, and start with St Kilda. 3-6, they're 14th. If we look at their season last year, they finished 6th with the 13 wins. What's their biggest concern?
Just their failure to score, Nat, their failure to have spark. I feel the tendency now for them to just let opponents dictate how matches are played, and I don't see answers forthcoming. I'm disappointed really, really immensely in Max King and that equal of the forward line down there. And I just don't see a club, Lordo, that is making the steps that I think it was expected internally coming out of a season in where they made the finals and pushed. It must be said, were more than competitive against GWS in that final.
Absolutely. They had a great year last year and they've gone backwards at a rate of knots. Their midfielders become pedestrian again. which doesn't help their forward line. They're a bottom 5 club as we stand, and it doesn't look like they'll get out of that the way they're playing.
What about their coach in Ross Lyon? Because after the game he talked about not being able to get runners out late. In previous losses he's spoken about the free kick count, short breaks. He's come under fire for making excuses. What did you make?
It's what he does. I mean, he is a deflector, and I get it. The runner access has got nothing to do with why they're playing poorly, Nate. I mean, if they can't solve their problems before the last 3 minutes of games regularly, they've got problems. And look, they might get some solace out of these losses being quite narrow consistently, but it's a theme now, and they're not winning, and there's just no spark. And then we get to another problematic club, and we'll go to the Tigers, Snap, because they've got as many problems. You're worried about their brand on field. I'm worried about their brand off field.
Yeah, they've got problems everywhere, and as I said, because they've won 3 flags, it's going to come at you a little bit because you had no access to top-end draft picks and things like that. But I thought, as I said, I was watching this, I was there live watching it, and I thought, what are they trying to do? Like, why don't they shift the ball off the line? They just kept kicking down the line to Liam Jones and Cleary and all these guys, Alex Keith, senior players who didn't really have a crack. And Adam Uze, I'm strong as well, like a lot of other people, to say how he sat there after the game and said our effort was fine. We gave him, we let them off the hook a fair bit because they had a lot of injuries. They're evolving as a team when they were 1 win and 7 losses, but that was an insipid performance the other night.
I think it off-field, Nat, and you talk about Adam Uze, who was recruited to the club to replace Damien Hardwick. Now, Hardwick bailed on a contract that still had 18 months to run. We learned over the weekend that Brendan Gale was having conversations with his still new president, who replaced Peggy O'Neill, John O'Rourke, about this time last year, about exiting at the end of this year. Now, hopefully Adam Uze was aware of that, and then maybe it wouldn't have changed his opinion to come to the club, but I raise it because of the unknown of Richmond. You've got Cochin and Revold coming out of the system, Hardwick just bailing. Brendan Gale now will be CEO of another football club come January 1 next year. They've checked out. They've long checked out. Now, I'm not questioning their individual motives to want to leave, and Gale could not have done anything more. Hardwick couldn't have done anything more. But it's left Uze in a really problematic position.
Are you worried there'll be more departures?
I think there's an attitudinal problem on the playing list at the moment. Shea Bolton is not playing well. Dusty Martin, again, maybe he's just come to the end. But these are questions that I think need leadership off-field as much as they do from the coaching perspective. And Brendan Gale shouldn't, in my eyes, shouldn't be having a say now in what happens with Dusty Martin and other contracts, because he's not going to be there. And the problems for Richmond are now not his, and he's checked out.
Now, you need to keep the right senior players, and you need enough senior players because you don't want to cut too thin. But if Liam Baker doesn't want to be there, I'd be getting as many top 20 draft picks as possible to help Adam Uze in this next 5-year period.
Well, speaking of clubs that have cut too thin in the past, North Melbourne is one of those, Damo, and obviously you've been fairly strong on that, but yet to win a game after 9 rounds. And you look at their fixture, Essendon, Port Adelaide, and then the bye. Yeah. I don't know where in other wins coming.
No, it's just a predictability every week now. Opposition teams just wait for them to make mistakes, and the damning number we're highlighting here now is the scores against, and to be having a score average of 120 points. They've got no backline. They've only got one forward of note 2 in Nick Larkey, and their midfield is young. And while it's encouraging from a future perspective, it's not anywhere near ready being competitive right now.
So those are our 3 most disappointing teams so far in 2024. I want to rewind now back to Thursday night because the Blues held on against a fast-finishing Melbourne outfit to win by 1 point. They blitzed the D's early, kicking the first 6 goals. And Lloydie, we spoke so much in the past couple of weeks about their ball movement. The Blues, it was much improved against the D's.
Harry Mackay's mum called them cardiac Carlton yesterday because they give you a heart attack every time you watch them play, and the margins are really fine. So it can be they're within a kick every week. So they need to improve. And this time last week we showed the bombing. So they lose this game by a kick because of moments like this. They only need 1 more goal. They win this game. But there was no thought. There was no method. Look at these players. There's no one coming up at the ball. They all know it's just going to be sat on Charlie's head. So why bother leading? But I thought in the space of a week this changed. And again, they win this game by 1 point. But again, do I just bomb it to Harry? That might not have been a bad option, but he would have probably sport that through. No, Charlie got higher, up the ground, and they lowered their eyes much better. So there's 1 goal they find. Patrick Cripps, normally that would be rolled and just bomb it. No, how can I do this differently? Let's hit up to Matty Owies. So that was a different way of scoring. So there's 2 goals they found. They blew the game open in that early period. So a great adjustment from Carlton, which they do need to do a lot more.
Yeah, it was really good, wasn't it? Damo, if the D's had won, it would have been off the back of Christian Petracca's performance. It was immense. 5 goals, 10 score involvements, 21 disposals, 7 tackles. Now, I know he's won a Norm Smith medal, but where does this game rate?
To me, it was up there. If you just want to remove the stakes at play in a grand final in a Norm Smith medal, if you just want to look at the performance, I reckon what he did against Carlton in this particular game was every bit as good. Now it was forced upon him and the club because he hadn't touched it effectively in the first quarter. But what he did, Lordo, single-handedly nearly won them the game of footy. And I don't know whether it papers over their problems or it actually provides a solution for the problems that we've been talking about for the best part of 2.5 seasons now, that being the forward line.
Nat, you come up with these scores, so I don't want to steal your graphic here. But this is the first half scores that you raised in our meeting about where they're at. So what happens, they put themselves in a situation. So this is their first half scores in their last 4 games. And suddenly you have to go, OK, what do? We need to throw Petracca forward. So I think it is, he did paper over the cracks. His heroics the other night. Van Rooyen's a real problem. He hasn't come on. Turner, I'm not sure he's there yet.
He's still young.
Yeah, he's still too young. The Smalls have dropped off. Ben Brown's back in the 2s.
And Harrison Petty keeps teasing in that space.
He's not a genuine forward.
Right.
So, I still think that they're going to fall short again this year because they need heroics like that. So Christian's not going to do that too often. Melbourne are a worry for me.
Friday night football, GMHBA Stadium. What a win it was for Port Adelaide. And check out Port Adelaide coach Ken Hinkley. I've never seen him so animated. I absolutely love it. It was the first time they'd beaten the Cats down at the Cattery since 2007. They're 6-3 now. Port Adelaide in 6th position on the ladder. Clearly meant a lot to him, Damo.
Well, you'd love to know what he was saying back to the supporters, who I've got no doubt were giving it to him through the duration of that particular game. I love the way he soaks it up and loves it. And what he did, it was bold the way he set it up, Lordo. And you want to highlight how they did set it up in the first quarter with some interesting forward movement.
Yeah, well, I was watching it early. They scunged so many balls, so they didn't allow Tom Stewart and Zach Guthrie to mark the footy to Koning. So the first couple of goals they scunged, and also
he was immense, Jason.
He was massive. And another scunged goal. Rioli got out the back and kicked 4 of his goals. So I thought to myself, how do you beat Geelong? And I think their only weakness is their speed through the midfield. And I thought they kept speed on the ball. Once they won it back like this, they just went hard and fast. And I've never seen Geelong's defence so rattled. We'll see Tom Stewart soon, what they did with him, with McEntee. So it was, again, a fantastic coaching performance by Kenny Hinkley with the way they attacked Geelong.
And let's talk about that coaching move. Jed McEntee onto Tom Stewart. It didn't allow him to have his normal intercept game. I think Chris Scott had to move him onto the wing at one point. A club's going to use this now, Lloydie, as a blueprint to how to beat Geelong.
Yeah, well, we saw Adelaide tried early in the season, but they picked the wrong player. They picked Pedler. He just couldn't execute it. So it's easy to try, but you've got to find the right player. But that's the second time in a few years that they've upset Tom Stewart with strategies of not allowing him to be the free player behind the ball.
So Sir Doug Nicholls' round kicks off on Thursday night in the top end. It's Gold Coast and Geelong. Chris Scott said, Damo, after the game they were going to rest and manage Tom Hawkins, and then the next morning Jeremy Cameron enters concussion protocols because he reported some concussive symptoms. Do you change your thinking on Hawkins, or are they both going to miss?
It's not a Geelong move to change and second-guess themselves. So I'd imagine they'd both miss, Nat, and the Cameron absence is a controversial one, given he was allowed to stay on the ground when he did sustain that head knock.
And we want Hawkins to break the record in Geelong.
That's true. That'll be a nice moment, won't it? Let's go to the top of the table. The Swans are 8-1. They're absolutely flying, and I'm looking at their side going, there is no weakness at the moment, Lloydie.
Yeah, there's a lot of players in the game and mids and dynamic players, but they don't score. And they just, the list is endless. Like there's your man Warner Damo.
Chad.
Heaney's the best player in the comp. There's the Chad. Look at McInerney charging through. Parker can't even get a game. Haywood's kicked 8 in 2 weeks. So Goulden. So they're just everywhere, and I think that's where their point of difference is on the competition with mids who score goals, and these numbers.
And there's your point there. Yeah. And the greatest mystery of 2024 season is Richmond beating them back in round 4. That will stay as the biggest upset.
You're right. For Fremantle, it was a really tough night. We saw the emotional scenes before and after the game, and this was their coach, Justin Longmuir, on all that had happened after the passing of a former teammate in Cam McCarthy.
Not just tonight, it was more during the day, and hence why we made a late change to the emergencies, or we had players that were close to not playing. So reiterate, proud of the way they went out and competed.
And these are the pre and post-match scenes pertaining to the Cam McCarthy tributes. And the game of footy was it wasn't even a distant second. It just wasn't even in the thought processes of those two guys on screen, Nat Fyfe and Alex Pearce there, who very, very powerful imagery, put the flowers into the goal square at that end of Optus Stadium. And you can see the scoreline, you can see the problems for Fremantle from the football perspective, but it just didn't matter for them. And I'm just absolutely forgiving them for that performance.
I know. Can you cancel a game of footy based on that? I mean, I know what it does to fixturing, but it just, what's the point of playing footy when something like that's happened?
Yep.
It's a really tough one for the Dockers, and that leaves them 5-4 at the moment. Let's talk about the Hawks before we finish up today, because it's been a massive turnaround from them in the last month. They've won 3 of their last 4, Lloydie, which is pretty good considering that Gold Coast game was an absolute stinker.
Yeah, and I love this from Sam Mitchell, and it's been a phenomenal turnaround since he made these comments in his post-match.
You're just not going to be able to compete against anyone the way we played tonight, and that's just completely unacceptable way to play, and we should be past games like that. They were really good, but that's as bad as we've played in a long time.
Lee Matthews always says you speak to your players when you're in an after-match conference, and he spoke to his players and said, I'm not going to cop that. You're better than this. And John Newcombe was a surprise how quiet he was, because when you're this tough, I don't expect players like this to have quiet games, but he was quiet the first month. But he
was, wasn't he? Yeah.
Has really lifted the Hawks.
Yep, and I just love teams that respond within seasons and against adversity. And while you can question the opponents that have beaten Nat in that stretch, ultimately they've turned their season around in the space of a month since those comments. And I love that aspect of it.
Speaking of responses, Lloydie and I have barely fired a shot. If we take a look at the Crypto.com tipping leaderboard, we are pathetic, Lloydie.
You know, my daughter has said to me now, can I please get Damo's tips? So she
no.
wants Damo's tips.
Lord, I shouldn't say this, but I will come crashing down. I'm surprised I'm still leading. Because no.
You're leading the whole AFL.com.au football tips.
Well, that might be a bigger mystery than Richmond beating Sydney.
It is. It actually is. All right, that is all we have time for on Access All Areas. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next Monday. In the meantime, have a fantastic week.